perhaps my favorite of all of them, believe it or not. The third mimer in the series. This is a mimer which was destined to be handed out on Purim. By the way, I don't know if you guys were in the Fabrengen last night, but there was an amazing story told, which I must repeat. He said that every year the Frierdiker Rebbe, the previous Rebbe, would buy the aliyahs. Did you hear this story last night? It's amazing. He would, like, in other words, in 770 he would pre-buy the aliyahs that he would take and that his two sons-in-law would take, one of them being the Rebbe. In other words, like a mensch, they're going to anyway give the Rebbe an aliyah and his sons-in-law, but he said, why should I, I guess have it for free? So he would buy the aliyahs, and he would give a certain amount every year in the beginning of the year, and he would take maftir, he would give to the Rashag Shlishi, and the Rebbe would take Shishi, the sixth aliyah. And each year he would give a little bit more money, like a tosefes, I don't know, interest or something, a tosefes, a little addition. So every year we got the same amount. The Gabbai would receive the same amount plus a little bit. And this went on. You got the same amount plus a little bit. In the year 1950, which was the year he passed away, in the beginning of that year, he gave out like a third was missing of this amount. And the Gabbai received the money, and he was like a little bit shocked. What is he going to say? Is the Rebbe? He's okay, whatever. He wasn't expecting money in the first place. The whole thing was like a little bit of an amazing thing that he did. All of a sudden comes Parshas Bo. The Rebbe passes away. He does the calculation between how many Parshas, from Bereshis to Bo, and it was the exact amount plus a little bit, which means that it's a mamish amazing story. Like he said that. The Mashpia last night said that this Nisan Nemanov, the great Mashpia, he used to tell this story every year because it's Mamash Ruach HaKodesh, and that Frierdiker Rebbe definitely knew he was going to pass away, like Mamash to even a little bit. And so you could see, I told you guys that at the end of every single one of these Maimarim, he hints to his own passing. And so if he knew exactly to the Shabbos that he was going to pass away, even made that clear and sort of showed the world. I never heard the story before, to be honest with you, but it's obviously not a secret. Then it's also, he knew that when he gave this mimer for Yud Shvat, it was going to be his mimer for and what does it speak about? All sevenths are beloved. It's mamash a passing on the torch to the seventh generation of Chabad. So as we said, each mimer ends with this little concept, but also we have to say that each mimer is also exactly aligned. He knew what he was doing. So the third mimer happens to be a Purim mimer, right? It doesn't actually have a title. The first mimer, the second mimer, and I believe the third mimer. No, the third and the fourth mimers are not actually entitled to anything. So it's just chapter 11, right? So we'll take it from there. Yeah, chapter 11. We're going to be on page Tes Zion. And we're going to pick up right where we left off, as is customary with what's called a hemshech, a continuation of Maimarim. So he says like this. You guys found the place?
Is it alright if I follow along with this?
It's in English?
Yeah.
Yeah, if you want, there's also a book here you can use. That's easier for you. So he says, Levar ba'omek yoser. Let's explain in further depth. Mash Yisrael nikrayim b'shem tzivos Hashem. The Jewish people are called the legions of God. Remember, we spoke yesterday about 3 different explanations, perushim, of what the word tzava means. Does anyone remember any of them? Colors, like plurality, right?
Multiple,
yeah. What else? Army, an army man.
Limitation.
And a limited number of fixed days, right? Like a limited number of time. Very good. So he says, let's understand why the Jewish people are called by this name, Tzivos Hashem. The Shem Tzivakos, as we said yesterday, the actual name, Hashem Tzivakos, is a Shem Kadosh. It's one of the 7 holy names that cannot be erased. If you write it, you have to bury it, if you're not going to use it. Tehu me'azayin Shem Hashem Nimchakim. It's one of the 7 names that can't be erased. Shem Zen Nizgala Al Yedei Anavim. And as we said yesterday, this is not in the Torah, this name. So only one. It's not actually written in the Chumash. It's first was said by Chana and the mother of Shmuel, and it was revealed by the prophets. The Torah lo nizkor shem tzibakos. The Torah does not mention it. Karak Sivos Hashem. But it is sort of hinted to, the word is mentioned, but just in the opposite order of what would make it one of God's names, and instead it takes the place of what's called Sivos Hashem, the legions of God, and it refers Kai al Yisrael, refers to the Jewish people, not to God, like we said yesterday. We have to understand, what is this quality that we're basically calling the Jewish people, basically with one of the names of God. Okay, it's not at that moment a holy name, but it is God's holy name, and we're calling the Jewish people by it. So what does it come to signify? What's the significance? What quality and what level did we reach to merit to be called by this particular name? Tzivakos, Tzivos Hashem. And here's a clue, because this title was given to the Jewish people upon their coming out of Mitzrayim. So something about Mamash, the Geula, and our placement in the Geula suddenly captured us this name. But the concept is, so we'll see here, Tehine Isa b'Midrash Rabbah, Shmos Perigimel. It's brought in the Midrash Rabbah of Shmos. It says, Shmiya Tamabakesh Leida. So the question, God basically asks the question to the Jewish people. He says, my name you are requesting to know? Like, you're asking my name? Lefi ma'asai ani nikra. So he says, I'm called according to my deeds. In other words, you're not going to pin me down on a name. I'm indescribable. But basically, if you want to call me something, you'll call me according to the way I express myself through my work, right? Like the person might have a name, right? Moshe, but you're going to call me student, or you're going to call me fireman, or you're going to call me, businessman, whatever it is. Through the deeds, that's how you're going to call me. When I fight the wicked, ani nikra tzivakos. That's when you call me tzivakos. So we learned something that obviously Hashem has, the name Yud-Kei Vav-Kei is sort of like his personal name, Moshe. But all the other names are some type of a name that we call him because that person is acting in a certain way, and when he's fighting wars with wicked, he's called Sivakos. Yeah.
So does this mean that whenever there's a name after God's name, that name means God's name too? Like, let's say it says God is like justice. So does that mean that justice is now God's name because it was said after Adon?
There are other like nicknames. That's not really obviously the most appropriate word, but for Hashem, like we call Hashem Rachum V'Chanun, right? We call him merciful and etc. We call him Chacham. We call him a lot of like wise, but the 7 unerasable names, they take a different category. That they're actually his name, so to speak. It's not just things that we call him. But you mentioned a good point. Every single one of the 7 names, the 6 names, are paired in the Torah with Yud-Kei Vav-Kei. So we will say like Hashem Kael, right? Hashem Elokim, Hashem Tzivakos, right? Hashem Adni, right? They're all, you'll find that because basically the name Yud-Kei Vav-Kei is unique in that, like I said, it's like his ultimate essential name. It's called the ineffable name. It's the name that they would pronounce, in the Beis HaMikdash, and learn it once every 7 years secretly amongst the Kohanim, and we can't even say it anymore, right? So it's like, that's like a special name. But the other names are more what he's saying here, that he's called according to his deeds. So that name sort of partners up with a particular action. It's like the light and the vessels, the way it's explained in by the Alter Rebbe. The name of the light is Yud-Kei Vav-Kei. And the light is going to come through a particular color, a particular vessel, whether it's kindness or severity, and then that light is going to come into the vessel, let's say, of Elokim. So then it's called Hashem Elokim, right? And then because he's functioning in a particular way with that name.
Got it.
Im Kain, move on. If so, now what did we just say? That he fights the wicked, he's called Tzivakos. If so, it's understood. The Shem Tzivakos who Shem de Milchama is the name of war. V'kein Isa b'shari ora l'rig, and so it's also brought in a sefer called Shari Ora, the Shem Tzivakos, who benetzach v'hod. What spheros are aligned with this name? Because there's also, the spheros also, like I just said, are the vessels of the light, and therefore each sphera has a particular divine name that goes with it. Particularly, the vessels of the spheros. So, for example, the light of every sphere is Yud Kei Vav Kei. But like the vessel of Chesed has the name Kale, and the vessel of Gevura has the name Elokim, right? Uniquely, the vessel of Tiferes. Anyone know what name it has? Tiferes. What's that?
Spender.
Spender?
They said it like slum.
He's a big spender.
Splendor.
Oh, splendor. No, but what's the divine name?
Beautiful, like it's
The divine name. In other words, the beauty is not one of the. So Tzivakos would be a name, but we just said it's in Netzach and Hod. What is the name of God that goes together with the vessel of Tiferes? And it's actually, interestingly enough, Yud Kei Vav Kei. So Tiferes is unique from all the other spheros, and I'll tell you why in a second. Maybe you'll figure it out on your own. That the light and the vessel are both named Yud Kei Vav Kei. And the idea is, what is Tiferes? Not that I want to get off the point here, but just, we opened up the box and we'll just close it. The Tiferes, if you remember, is this very unique sphera which combines opposites, right? It's the idea of Chesed and Gevura, and together, when they mix together, which is almost like an impossibility, right? Mixing two opposites is really something truly divine. Right, even to the point it says, "Osei shalom b'mromav, hu yaseh shalom aleinu." Right, Hashem, who makes peace in heights, in His heights, may He make peace upon us. So the question is asked: what peace that has to be made in the heights? Is there like war in the heights that has to be made peace? Something like that Hashem makes peace in His heights. What does it mean? Anybody? We learned it ourselves together. But that shouldn't have us know it. So it says that the minister of fire, right, the Sar Shel Eish, which is Gabriel, and the Sar Shalmayim, which is Michael. These are like master angels of the four archangels that Hashem has. And they have completely opposite natures. One is the nature of fire, one is the nature of water. They should really, cancel each other out. And one should negate the water, should put out the fire, etc. And yet, when they stand before the king, just like two generals, right, who are like in themselves exceedingly powerful, when they stand before the king, so they sort of come to a state of bittul. So too, the ministering angels, when like the great light of the essence of Hashem shines, despite the fact that they've been like loaded up with divine powers to be play a certain particular nature, they're able to like suspend that nature, almost like we had in the miracle of the barad, the hail, right? It says it was hailstones with fire inside. How does that work? Right? There was some kind of a combination of forces over there, which is supernatural. And that's what Tiferes is, even in our own lives, by the way. Right? We have like this idea of Tiferes, which is really called compassion, mercy. What is mercy? Right? So, first of all, you have a nature to do kindness, right? Which means you'll give anything to anyone. You're just a kind person, like a Kohen. It's called Ish Chesed. You just don't need any conditions upon this kindness. Then you have another nature of judgment, and you're going to you have a powerful nature of judgment, which means you're going to see, does this person deserve anything? And if you're going to be honest with yourself, it says by Hashem, says that even the angels don't deserve. Like the midah of Gevurah of Hashem would make it that the whole world wouldn't even exist, because no one really earned their keep around here, right? If you're going to judge something to the strictest degree, you're not going to give, because nothing's really worthy. And so you have these two qualities which are oppositional to each other. What is mercy, rachamim, tiferes? Is that basically you somehow combine them and you say, even though you're not worthy, I'm going to give you anyway. That's what it means to have mercy on someone. Even though you're not worthy, I recognize that. I'm not negating my quality of judgment. I'm just sort of like suspending it, like fire in the middle of hail, or like the archangels, like who should squash each other out, but they're just like going to suspend their expression, and therefore, even though I recognize you don't deserve it, I'm going to give anyway. Chesed and Gevurah match together, so that's a divine quality on the highest levels, and therefore, even the vessel of Tiferes is the Shem Havaya. Shem Havaya representing something which is really supernatural. Yeah.
What's the this is Gevurah? What's I learned the other day that there's that Hashem created a number of worlds before this world. One of the worlds was a world of Gevurah, and he had to destroy it. But Hashem knows everything, so I don't understand why create this world. Like, why create the world in the first place? Like, Hashem knew the world wouldn't be able to stand for complete Gevurah, so why would it? Why destroy? Like, what's the purpose? I don't understand. What's the lesson for us? Why go through that process in the first place?
So it's off the topic,
Okay.
but I'll just say a few words on it. But let's not continue. I'll tell you what I think, and then even though there's going to be questions upon that, we'll move on.
Okay.
But the idea is essentially that Hashem, of course, He knew, right? But it's the same reason why Hashem created you for 13 years with a Yetzer Hara only, and only at the Bar Mitzvah He decides to put your Nefesh Elokis in there, right? In other words, the broken worlds are not just a thing of the past that happened once upon a time and went away. Unlike, there's certain Kabbalistic theories that think that they were. The Hasidic, the Arizal even, and upon that, the Hasidic paths completely reject that explanation. The idea of the broken world is that we're still in the broken worlds. Those worlds that existed before was really the shattering of the world of Tohu. And the remnant of that is the evil that remains, the unrefined world that remains here, which is still in a state of brokenness. And now you can probably understand the reason for it, because without it, we have no free will. Hashem created basically the Yetzer Hara before He created the Yetzer Tov. So now we can get back to our point, which is that now there's a war on the table. And in order to fight a war, there's a special force within God that He whips out, which also has a special divine name which is associated with it, which is also associated with a certain number of spheros, which is Netzach and Hod. And this is the name Tzivakos. When Hashem wants to win that war against the Yetzer Hara, or like when He's going to mamish destroy all of Mitzrayim and drown them in the sea, suddenly the name Tzivakos is used. Right? So you're more on target than we thought. And this is the idea that when Hashem uses this name, it's a name of war, and therefore it also goes on the spheros of Netzach and Hod. Right? It's connected with war. And why is Netzach and Hod, by the way, names of warfare? Does anyone have any idea about that? Where do we get, in other words, that's supposed to be helping us in our explanation. But actually, does it help us? Why is Netzach and Hod? We have to know a little bit about the spheros. Why is it so obvious that if there's a name of God that's connected with warfare, it should be Netzach and Hod? Anybody?
Netzach is victory.
Okay, Netzach is victory. That's
And it's
an
on the right
easy one.
side of the rock.
Well, of Netzach and Hod, they're on left and right. Hang on, I kind of feel like I lost the place here. The Shem Tzvakos Hu b'Netzach v'Hod. Okay, umisham nimshach es kol milchama sheba'olam. And from there, from Netzach and Hod, He says, come forth all the wars of the world. Now, why? What do we know about the spheres to understand why Netzach and Hod are so warring in their nature? Anybody? The answer is because if you understand the emotional spheros, so you have the Chabad, let's just leave that off the side for a second, that's the intellect, and it's basically like a triad, right? You have Chokhmah, Bina, and Das. Again, you have the right, left, and center, just as we spoke about before. Then you also have Chesed, Givur, and Tiferes, right, left, and center, in emotional realm now, right? So the truth is, what is Netzach Hod Yesod, right? It's another triad. It's also emotions, because we know there's 6 emotions, right? There's Chesed, Gevurah, Tiferes, Netzach, Hod, Yesod, but they're broken into 2 groups. Netzach, Chesed, Gevurah, Tiferes, we call it Chagas, right? And Nehi, and Netzach, Hod, Yesod. So as it comes out, there's only really 2 emotions, if you think about it, that we speak about. There's love and fear. There's right and left. And as we mentioned before about Rachamim, some kind of a combination of the 2. What is Netzach, Hod, Yesod? Why are these such important distinctions within your emotional body that they get their own spheros? And the reality is they're not different from love and fear. It's called love and fear and their offspring. And the offspring of love and fear, Netzach Hod, right? The way it works is when you have generated with your Chabad some reason to love, so your sphere, let's say, of Chesed is ignited and you're now in love. But for that love to actually express itself and down the pike, so to speak, in a deed or a thought or an action, right, or a thought, speech, or an action, there's resistance. There's going to be a whole world of resistance that even though you love it, right? Let's say, for example, I love Hasidus, but I came 25 minutes late to Hasidus class today. So if everything was going in accordance with a normal reality, your love would immediately lead to action, right? And it would be like the next, just like your intellect. When you think about how much you love, how great Hasidus is, you naturally come to love it, right? So there's a flow. So why, when I love it, do I not just immediately go to action and do it? There's a what's called a kitro. There's a judgment on that area. And the idea is that to get the love to come to an emotional state where it's now relevant to act upon, it has to go down a whole nother level, right? Like it says by Avram Avinu, he sort of championed this because he, of course, was the midah of chesed. He was the midah of love. He loved Hashem. That was like his nature, his essence. And to the point that even when he had his bris, and he was the third day of his milah, which is the most painful. So you say you might give the guy a break. Your mom is 99 years old. You just had a milah. It's the third day of the milah, the most painful day. Even Hashem said, "I'll hold back the passerbys so he doesn't have to run and feed them." But Avram had this midah of netzach going, netzach of chesed, where he was like, despite the fact that the intellectual reasoning are not enough to generate the love, and the love is not sort of happening in a way where it's just like blazing in my heart, but I'm going to basically perform acts of love even though I don't feel it anymore, right? I'm going to just, and he went out to Mamash stand at the door of the tent to look for passerbys, even when, naturally speaking, right, the love was not burning in the way that it should, because he was in pain, and so that's something you want to do. So when you sort of like overcome the natural love and allow the emotion of love to champion itself anyway and come out, that's called the Inyan of Netzach, and Hod is on the side of Gevurah. So now you can see why this is called war, because in order to basically push through and maintain the midah to keep going down the pike, it comes with tremendous resistance, and therefore a war has to be won, and that's why the actual midah is called victory. It's really love, right? It's really the side of love, and it's the continuation of love. So why do we call it victory? There's not like a special midah that you have inside of yourself called victory, really. It's love. But this love is a victory, because you shouldn't really normally have such a love. And in order to attain it, you have to sort of be victorious and overcome all the obstacles in the way. Moshe Rabbeinu in the Spheros is also called Netzach, right? Remember where do we see this? On Sukkot, you have all the 7 shepherds that get a day in the sukkah, right? The first day is Avram, then Yitzchak, then Yaakov, then who? Moshe. So Moshe represents Chesed, Gevurah, Tiferes, Netzach, right? Why is Moshe called Netzach? For the same reason, because the Torah of God for 26 generations didn't come into this world, because the Torah of God, what business does it have in this world? It's most divine information. We're the lowest world. Even if Hashem loves us, there's still a huge resistance within himself in order to bring the Torah all the way down to physicality. In the days of Avram, he learned Torah, but he learned the Torah as it was in Shemayim. What's the point of like mamash entering Torah into the flesh and blood of the physical world? It doesn't come naturally. So therefore, Moshe, who was the bringer of the Torah, his little midah is netzach, right? Because he had to overcome this unbelievable war of even the angels came and they said, why are you giving the Torah to the world? Give it to us. What are you doing? You're crazy. So there had to be this override of the system that even though you don't feel a reason for the love, you act the love anyway. You push the love through. So therefore we see that it's called war and victory. Mashpia is calling. Awesome. Right in the middle of Moshe. So this is why we're saying that the name Tzivakos, when God needs to bring the war, so to speak, out, it's associated with those 2 midos, the Netzach and Hod. Is that everyone understands what Netzach and Hod are all about?
What organs are this?
The 2 kidneys.
I get what Netzach is, but I don't really get what.
Hod is the same thing, but on the side of Gevurah. Right? There's a level of overcoming obstacles that not like I want to try and promote love, but let's say I want to promote discipline. And I can't really bring the discipline, the yitzchak, I can't like bring it to the world, because again, that's also an emotion of fear. Let's say I want to fear Hashem, right? But I don't necessarily feel the fear. It's not like burning inside me, the fear. So I'm going to have Kabbalah soul anyway. Like a certain year, who was called Hod? Aaron. And what was Aaron's thing? Is that he was just like, even in the midst when his children, Chas v'shalom, were killed in front of his eyes, Vayidom Aaron. He was just quiet, right? Which is like, in other words, that midah of like humility, which in face of such a war, which would have made you say a few things like, Hashem, why'd you kill the kids in front of the Mamash Mishkan? He just brought it down to another level. It was just held that state of discipline, even though there, like Avram, there was every reason not to. Right? So we just kind of brought it down another level. So it's the same thing, but on the side of the left side.
So netzach is when you don't feel a love, but you're supposed to bring out the love. Is
Yes,
that kind of
yes. The real midah, chesed, is not like burning in you, right? It's going down a further state towards the realm of action. And when you go down a further state, the guiding light is minimized, and so it's not raging inside of you. So in order to get it to come out, you have to have a strong, you have to fight a war against it, right? Mind you, this is even preceding the actual deed, the actual thought, speech, and action come later. This is just an emotion still. So this is still something internal, deeply internal, that has to happen on an emotional level, even to get it closer to deed. Deed, there's going to be another war against you, right? And that's the idea of like there's zero light left, right? When you get from chesed to netzach, it's just a tremendous minimization of the light. You have to overcome it with a battle. But to get to actual deed, it's like you're going into a realm where it's also like an aspect of war. That's why it's called malchus, right? It's like you have to mamash have be like a king and like overcome all obstacles to bring it that low. But still, it's the same principle going all the way down. So. Fine. So this is the ending of Shem Tzivakos connected with Netzach and Hod, which is where all the wars in the world come from. But Tzrich Lahavin, we have to understand Ma'wa Sheikhas de Milchama the Netzach Hod. What's the connection of warfare with Netzach and Hod? Shemisham Nimshach Kol Milchama Shaba'olam. That dafka from there, all wars are drawn into the world. By the way, this is not just a minor thing. But when there's war in the world anywhere, this is like Hashem taking his vengeance on the wicked. It's the Shem Tzivakos, which is doing that. Now, this concept of nitzachon is particularly connected with someone who is what's called a gadol, like he's great, he's big. In other words, not everybody can manifest their midah of nitzachon so simply, right? Like you said, to be Avram Avinu is not such a simple thing. I'm not feeling this at all, but I'm going to mamash overcome that and just do the right thing anyway, and persevere, right? It's the stuff that champions are made out of, right? The idea of nitzachon literally means victory. So you have two mamish masters, right, of a particular game, whatever it is. There's a whole tournament. The weak are going to be eliminated because they're not winners. It's not easy to be a champion, right? Maybe it's not exactly the most Jewish, depending on what you're competing in. It might not be such a Jewish thing, but I'll tell you, we just learned in the Rambam yesterday. By the way, how crazy is it on Yud Shvat, the one chapter of the Rambam yesterday? Anyone read it? It's the introduction of the laws of the Nasi. And it says there's 71 members of the Sanhedrin, and the 71st member of the Sanhedrin is in the place of Moshe Rabbeinu, is called the Nasi. It's crazy. Mamash on Yud Shvat.
The Shiach is 71st.
The Nasi is like the leader of Am Yisrael. One period. Unbelievable though. Anyway, over there it also talks about this healthy Jewish competition, because there's a crazy thing that takes place in the Jewish courts. We don't really see this anymore, but in our time of our empire was thriving. Here's how it worked. Listen to this. You had many courts. Any town that had 120 people minimum, you had to have a 23-member court, which means there's 23 like sages sitting in judgment only on a town of 120 people, right, minimum. And the idea is the way it worked would be as follows. There was a court in the Beis HaMikdash itself with 71 members. There was another court outside of it with 23 members, another court on the base of the mountain with another 23 members, and as I said, any court in the world had 120 people in a city, had another court of 23 members. So there was the place was filled with brilliant Jewish judges. I mean, think about like the amount of people in the, and here's how it worked. Any court of 23 members, let's say the court that's sitting on the bottom of the Temple Mount, they had another group of 23 judges who sat in front of them as potential stand-ins in case someone went missing. And then that group had another 23 in front of them, and that group had another 23 in front of them. So there was a group of, 69 people on wait in order, one by one. They knew who sat next to who was the greater judge. And if one person, for whatever reason, was missing from any one of the courts, everyone would bump up one notch. So the greatest guy on the row of the first 23, he would enter the court, and then everyone would move up a notch. So talk about competition, right? Everybody knew exactly where they stood, like how brilliant you were. In the whole Eretz Yisrael, it was like you were like sitting in like a row, waiting to be bumped up into Mamash the Sanhedrin. You can imagine how these people were on a whole different level. But we're talking about competition. Right? So there's such a thing as Jewish competition. That's where I was going with that. But the idea is that to be a winner, it's no joke. We can sit here, we can learn Aleph Beis, and we can get excited about learning Aleph Beis, and we can learn L'Shem Shamayim, and like no big deal. But let's say that I want a competition now. Who's going to learn Basi Lgani by heart? Well, 5 people signed up. And in the end, only 2 people actually did it. And in the end, they only did half. Because to be a winner, it's mamish hard. Right? It's not easy to win anything. Like, you have to mamish pull something out of you where you're like, I'm doing this. I'm going to mamish be like Tom Brady. I'm going all the way. You know what I'm saying? No one's going to stop me. I'm the winner. Only a gadol has the midah of netzach, because the guy who didn't beat Tom Brady, he didn't have the midah of netzach. He lost, which means netzach did not come out of him. So not everybody has netzach to the same degree. If you lose, you did not perform netzach. And on a simpler level, if Avram Avinu didn't go to the gates of the tent that day, he would not have pulled out his midah of netzach. We know he had netzach because he overcame all those obstacles. So netzach is not something that is easy to come by. It's mamish boss of the midos in this way. Because if you have it, you just won. You won. Remember we said the other day, another meaning of netzach besides victory is what? Netzach sela va'ed. It means eternal. The true winner, it wins every single time. He's the gadol mamish, like Hashem. Netzach Yisrael lo yishaker. It says that Hashem is called the netzach because he always wins. There's not a battle that Hashem is going to lose. And therefore he's eternal, right? If you win every battle, even the battle of death, you're going to be eternal. So therefore, this is something...
Death can't beat you, so naturally.
You're eternal, right? Yeah, who's going to win? You or death? If you win, you're eternal, right? So the word, you can see why the word for victory and the word for eternality is the same in Hebrew. Because if you're truly victorious every time, no one ever beats you. You live forever. So the only one who really is Netzach Yisrael. Hashem is called Netzach. That's his midah. So anyway, what are we saying from here? Netzach is shayach to a gadol, a great person only. To me, shu shafal be'erech, someone who's relatively lowly. Hineim yomar adam kenegdo lo yinatseach. Right? If someone's relatively lowly, he's not like mamash pulling out his true Jewish essence. Someone's going to stand up to him. He won't win. Simple as that. He's going to lose the match. He'll get pushed to the end of the line of sages. All he can do is el yachol anos azos. He can be arrogant. He can be stubborn. He can say but he lost. Right? But we all know everybody is capable of just making a lot of noise when they lose. But that's not called a winner. V'dafka mishu gadol, someone specifically who's an adult. That's the wrong explanation. Sorry, someone who's great, has greatness. Hayesh bo midas hanitzachon. That means he and he alone has this midah of nitzachon. Everybody has it, but you might not ever use it in your life. You're a loser, right? You have to be a winner. Again, it's not something that. It's a goyish concept because usually it comes with competition. What are you fighting for? Over a pigskin? Like, do me a favor, use your netzach for something useful. But if your mom is trying to get to the top of the Sanhedrin, it says that the two Jewish sages, it's called milchamto shel Torah. It's a war of Torah. There is such a thing. We're pretty mellow about it around here. But like, if you're gonna get playing with the big boys, you want a seat on the base din, you got to be better than the other guy, right? And like two chavrusas, they're called like people who like sharpening their swords against each other because it's a war. If you want to be big, right? The Rebbe didn't just become the Rebbe because he's nice to everybody, because he won the war of Torah. What are you going to say to him? He's going to beat you, right? He's going to respond in a way that you're going to realize you don't know what you're talking about. He does. The kasher yomar adam davar negdo, and a great man, right? When someone's going to say something to oppose him, is going to do something that's not in accordance with his will, he's going to win. He's going to bring out the righteous light of his own judgment, and he's going to overcome the guy. I can't help, this image popped in my mind. I was in yeshiva in Crown Heights, And Rabbi Goldberg, who doesn't love Rabbi Goldberg? Rabbi Goldberg stands all of like 4'3", right? He's a very short person, right? Maybe 5 foot, mamish. He's tiny. And he's got this giant, brilliant mind. The Rebbe called him his little gaon. The Rebbe mamish used those words. You're my little genius, right? It's okay, he's a genius. What does it mean? This is what it means. I was one time walking in the night, Crown Heights, and unfortunately there was a car accident. It wasn't too crazy, but a bacher got hit by a car. It wasn't a horrible accident, but he mamish fell down. He was lying on the ground. And all the chevra from Crown Heights, and I'm not talking about the Jewish chevra, right? I'm talking about like big black guys that were looking shady, right? Because it was an accident, and it was a black guy that hit him. They came out and they were like surrounding the situation, and the kid was lying on the ground. There was like a bunch of like thug-like looking people just like standing around looking mean, like sort of surrounding the guy. And it was like I was standing there like it was scary. Like what's going on over here? Little Rabbi Goldberg walks right into the middle of the thing and he starts screaming at everybody, get out of the way, like scatter. I never saw anything like it. Like, in other words, like a great man has the meat of Netzach. Someone's gonna like do something that's like not according to his liking. He could be 5 foot nothing. He's gonna come in and mamish like change the whole situation and mamish make it go. All of a sudden it was like everyone was scared of him. They all ran away, right? It was crazy. But I saw it with my own 2 eyes. Yeah. In other words, you have nitzachon. Like mamish, you're the boss. You're a winner. Rabbi Goldberg, man. Anyway, so the point is that he's going to bring out the or tzidko. He's going to bring out the light of his argument, of his justice is going to come out. And this is what the sages said in Yuma. Here it is. Kol Talmid Chacham she'enu nokim v'noter kenachash enu Talmid Chacham. This is a very bizarre statement, but it's very much aligned with what we're saying. Any Talmid Chacham who does not have vengeance and revenge like a snake is not a Talmid Chacham. How about that? If you don't have vengeance and revengefulness like a snake, you cannot put yourself in the realm of Talmid Chacham. Perush Rashi, what does it mean? First of all, those are 2 things which are both isurim midoraisa, right? You're not allowed to have revenge, and you're not allowed to be vengeful, right? It's like there's 2 different mitzvahs losase, and here we're saying if you don't have both of those 2 things, you can't be called a Talmid Chacham. We need an explanation for this. Rashi says, no kem nikmaso v'noter eva b'libo kanachash. That basically he takes vengeance and he holds like revengeful feelings in his heart like a snake. Like he's sitting there like not giving up on this thing. He's gonna mamish take this thing to the end. You're not getting out of his sights. He's gonna win this thing, right? He's like secretly plotting. It's like the Rebbe, like in mamish the 50s, the Rebbe was talking about the Jews are gonna get out of Russia, my friend, and we're gonna come out with like B'yad Rama. And everyone else is mamash sitting there worried about it, and they're trying to protest and doing this, that, and the other thing. The Rebbe's sitting there, mamash not letting go of the thing for 1 second, to the point that he mamash killed Stalin with his own words. I don't know if everybody knows that story.
Important.
But the idea is that he held mamash this revenge, right? Which is seemingly not a Jewish quality, right? And he says, if you want to know why it's specifically like a snake, he says, look at the Gemara over there. But he says, Hikshav Gemara. So this is a statement in the Gemara of Yuma, and the Gemara itself says, hello, ha kasiv lo takum v'lo titor. There's literally a negative commandment, 2 of them. Do not be vengeful and do not take revenge. U'mikom makom hara yesh heter the Talmid Chacham. How do you like that? The Talmid Chacham has a heter. Everybody else is not allowed to take revenge in any way. But a Talmid Chacham can't be a Talmid Chacham without doing it. Lios no came v'noter, to have these 2 qualities, but so to speak, use them for kedusha. However, this type of vengefulness, which is permissible by a Talmid Chacham, not only permissible, he has to have them in order to be a Talmid Chacham. It's not the same vengefulness that the Torah speaks about. Right, like the Torah gives an example. Like today, I lent you my hammer, and or I asked you to lend you my hammer, and you said no. So tomorrow I come back and I say, Can I lend? Can I? You want to come borrow my hammer, right? Did I mess up the story already? I ask you for a hammer. You say to borrow your hammer. You say no. The next day you come back and ask me to borrow my hammer. And there's two different ways, and these are the two different negative mitzvahs. One is I say, no, just like you didn't give me, I'm not going to give you. That's asur midaraisa. And the other one is you say, here, take it, even though you didn't give me yours. That's also asur midaraisa, right? So this is called taking revenge and vengefulness, like spite. So this is not the type of vengefulness that we're demanding from a Talmid Chacham, obviously. Right? So the Gemara answers, that's talking about when it comes to money matters. Like I was saying, we're not talking about Tom Brady, we're talking about being a winner. Nah, in that case, you should be humble, sit on the bench, let the other guy win. Where are you going to go? Take the money. It's not about that, right? In Kedusha, this is a midah which is worthwhile having. In money matters, it's asur to have such a midah. Which means this vengefulness, which is permissible and required by a Talmid Chacham, he's not looking for anybody's money. It's not coming because or due to money. Again, like at the end of the day, you're winning the championship. I'm going to Disney World, right? I don't know if you guys, that's too before your time. There used to be like this thing when Disney had this promotion that anyone who won a big sports event, they would come up and they would say, I'm going to Disney World. Anyway, sorry. But the point is, we grew up on that line. Anyway, it's not over money, it's not leading to money. Mikom makom, harizin nekim of a natira, but it's still called vengeance. Just what? There's one little condition on this type of vengeance, and that is Talmid Chacham dafka. You have to be a Talmid Chacham. In other words, if you're not a Talmid Chacham, put this midah away and never use it. It's asur. But if you're a Talmid Chacham, mamish, then on the contrary, you need to have it, or you're not a Talmid Chacham. This is like a very strange little thing. It's something that if you're on a level of true kedusha, then you must bear this midah, and it's not in the same realm of everybody else who's not at that level, who's actually has to stay away from it with a 10-foot pole. And what is the definition of a Talmid Chacham? And we'll end here. Talmid Chacham hu shemekabel min ha-chachma. So what does it mean to be a Talmid Chacham? Does it mean you know the whole Shas? Not necessarily. It means Talmid Chacham, let's just translate literally the direct words, right? Why don't we call a Torah scholar a Talmid Chacham? Why don't we call him like a Melumad b'Torah? Like let's translate it directly. We don't. We call him a student of wisdom. And a student of wisdom, we know that wisdom is what? Wisdom is koach ma. Wisdom is bittul. What's that?
The beginning of wisdom is sphere of Hashem.
Right. Wisdom is bittul, right? Which means it's like a sphera, which is basically just divinity incarnate, right? Which means that if it's there, there's no yeshus there, there's no self there, there's no self-identity, there's no arrogance, there's none of this, right? So if you are a Talmid Chacham, if you're a student of that, which means you're constantly trying to not be having your needs met, but you're pushing your needs aside for the sake of wisdom, the truth of the Torah, then on the contrary, you have to have a little piece of this vengefulness because it's really not yours. You're a student of wisdom. There is no you, right? Rabbi Goldberg's not running into that crowd because he wants to prove that he's a big guy. He's a little guy. But because like the Torah shines in him, then nothing will stand in his way because they're afraid of anything. He's a gadol. Okay, we'll hold here. So yeah.
She kill you.